So, guys, we have done something a little different this time. We're going to be talking about comparison tables, and we have Lorenzo put together a bunch of examples. I've put together a few examples as well. We're actually using another industry as a source of inspiration for this episode. A lot of times, it's about cross-pollinating ideas, and of course, if you listen to Lorenzo's ideas at the end of his presentation, he actually is going to tell you about how to get access to bonus content. So enjoy the show.
All right, guys, welcome to another episode. We're super excited today. We're not going to do any type of analysis of any direct-to-consumer brand, but we're going to be talking about a topic that I would say every single e-commerce brand has to deal with, which is comparison behavior. So comparing one thing with another thing. So, obviously the most popular one would be compare one product with another product. So I'm gonna go ahead and share my screen because I got first of all some recommendations on. I want to make a case about. I want to show you guys why this is important, and then I got some ideas of brands, e-com, and actually SaaS as well that are doing something right. A couple of examples of businesses that they're not doing something right, but they're kind of like not really helping the user. And then Rishi has other examples as well. So I want to build a case for comparison behavior. If you have any sort of like hesitation or doubt or skepticism around, oh no, users don't really compare anything on my site, or no, users don't compare anything during the customer journey. I actually want to show you data, evidence here, right? Like, we're CRO people. We need to show evidence. We hate the EPOs, right? So this is a screenshot from a keyword research tool called Ahref. And simply what I've done is I typed in the keyword Dyson, and then I filter by the keyword VS. So kind of like the keyword for comparison. And I want to show you like a few examples of things that people that are interested in Dyson search for. So Dyson V10 versus V11, this is like a model comparison. So they're comparing two different models of the same brand. Tineco versus Dyson. So now I want to understand the differences between the Dyson brand and the Tineco. Comparison about similar products, but the same brand. So for example, Dyson has a hair dryer brand, but also an air wrap brand. And they want to understand what the difference are. These are completely completely different products, right? So they want to understand what the differences are. Another example here comes from Nike, same process. Nike versus Adidas. This is like super broad type of comparison, but I thought it was interesting. Then Nike Core Vision versus Air Force One, which is two different models of shoes. This one, Rishi, I thought was super interesting. Nike Youth Shoes size chart versus women's. Now they want to understand the difference of the sizing chart, which is interesting. And maybe like they're buying shoes for themselves and for kids as well, and they want to understand the difference of the size chart. I have other couple of examples. So this one is from Peloton. I simply Googled in Google, I Googled Peloton versus. And now they're comparing Peloton against going to the gym. So now it's not just comparing one company against another one, right? Like Adidas against Nike. This is like a comparing one solution with another one in a category that is completely different, right? Just to show you how in the mind of the user, Peloton is competing against the gym subscription, right? So not only with all the other similar products in the market in the same category, but also in completely different categories. And I thought it was interesting that the user is actually telling us this, right? Because in the Google suggest, this is what people are searching for. The next one is Glossier. Here they're comparing product features, right? The color, but Boybra is one of their products that makes them like the women's bras a little bit more fluffy. So now they're comparing the color of the product. So it's a product feature comparison, which I also thought it was interesting. We recorded a few weeks ago. We also recorded an episode for Glossier. And in the episode, I actually showed how people are actually comparing reviews as well. These are the keywords that people are searching for, and they're comparing the reviews. They want to see the reviews of boy brow, blonde versus brown. Again, another data point that the comparison is not just about a product, but it's also like about other features, and in this case, reviews of the product. Now, as you can see from all this kind of like evidence and data, product comparison is part of the data, the customer journey, right? So the customer is doing comparison. Now I want to give some kind of like advice here on how to find out if you have any sort of like comparison problem. So first of all, it's very likely that your customers are comparing your product. So, I would say 99 out of 100, you do have a comparison problem potentially, especially if you never addressed it before. I want to show kind of like 3 ways I would actually go about figuring out if you have a comparison problem. But before that, maybe Rishi, you wanna, because I want this to come from you. Why do you think it's important to fix the product comparison problem?
So for me, I remember many years ago, one of the classic kind of studies that I had read was in Williams-Sonoma. They were selling, and I'm sure you've heard this too, but they were trying to sell a bread maker, and it was like a premium bread maker, and it cost like $300 or something. And it was stainless steel. It had all these wonderful features, and they were confident that it would sell really well. But when they put it out on the shop floor or on the retail store floor, they didn't find good sales at all. And so they came up with a new bread maker that had one extra feature, and it was priced like $100 more. And they placed them both together. And what they found was that no one bought the new bread maker either, but the sales of the old bread maker, the one that they were keeping next to it, really went up exponentially, because now people had something to compare. They could say, okay, I get one less feature for $100 less. Suddenly the second bread maker was more attractive. So to me, comparison, a comparison table actually allows the shopper to get that context, which they normally wouldn't get if they're just looking at the product.
Yeah, and if they're comparing the 2 products and they can't figure out what the difference between the product are, it's going to be hard to convert, right? So that's why nailing the comparison journey is a comparison behavior in general is so important. Now,
and I just want to add one more thing here, just to kind of, so that was the why comparisons matter. But of course, the next your question really is like, why does the comparison table matter? And to me, it is similar to FAQs, similar to, their similar behavior. People that are going to the FAQ section and people who are spending time in a comparison table, by definition, are having a struggling moment. They're unable to resolve how to go to the next step. So to me, it's a very critical touch point. It's, and that's why I think it matters quite a bit.
Yeah, and you actually serving the next point on a silver platter, because I put 3 examples of things that additional evidence that show that you might have a product comparison issue. So the first one is, if you look at your customer support tickets and you analyze the most popular reasons why people are reaching out to you, I hope you have tags there that can help you distinguish all the different reasons. If a lot of people are asking questions around, what's the difference between X and Y, right? X and Y, that being like 2 different products, or the same product but different variants, maybe like, one size versus another one. Then it's very likely that you do have a comparison problem, right? Like the user has to reach out to you in order to figure out what the difference is, because they can't. From a self-service perspective, like on the site, they can't figure it out. The other example of struggle behavior to compare is, this is if you have some Hotjar session recordings or Clarity session recordings tool installed on your site, and you start watching all these session recordings, and you see people going from collection page, so category page, to product page, and then going back to category page, and then check on a similar product to that, and then going back to the previous product. That's a kind of classic behavior that shows that the user is struggling with comparing different products and different features. In general, another example would be like, you set up some user testing. So you basically give a scenario to a user to see how the user reacts and how behaves and how the user trips out whenever using a comparison table. If you find like, okay, this is not useful or it's not clear what's on the comparison table, that's another way to figure out if you have comparison table issues. And I want to give a pro tip. So both Rishi and I are big fan of getting feedback from people in regards to one specific thing. So one recommendation I would have in order to figure out if you also have a comparison table issue is whenever that comparison happens, that being like a table or a comparison functionality, I've seen a lot of e-commerce having literally like developed a comparison tool that helps the user compare one product to another one. So not just a table with like, okay, just a kind of like a design table, right? This is just like a comparison feature. What I would suggest here is just to get feedback about that comparison table. Is that helpful to people? Like, how would they improve it? What's missing? Tell me one thing that like the one reason why this is not helpful to you, right? And this could be done extremely easy, simply with a link, right? That takes out the user out to like a form that it could be like an Airtable form or a Google form, completely free. So you don't need to pay any fancy tool, and you can ask a couple of questions about that specific comparison tool. Any question before I got into examples and ideas here?
No, this is really good. And once you show your first example, or second example, I'm going to actually talk about one other detail, but this is great.
Perfect. So let's talk about what is not a good example. So I was on the Magic Spoon website, which is a company that they're genius marketers, by the way, Rishi, and I know that you love their marketing as well.
And we've done an episode on them. So if you're interested in understanding what ideas we found out on their website, please watch that episode.
Totally. But I have to cherry pick one issue that I discovered, which is this comparison table. And this is not helpful for the user, right? When I look at a comparison table like this, I have tons of questions. A few of them are like, how have they come up with the list of features, right? Like, do they ask customers what features they care about? Are these the actual brands that customers are comparing Magic Spoon against in their journey? What about the alternative solution? What if I don't like cereal, but in the morning I like to eat something else? Well, now you need to convince me that cereal is the best choice versus whatever I'm consuming at the moment for breakfast in the morning. How do I know I can trust what you're saying, what you actually input here in the comparison table, right? Like, this comes from the company. How do I know if I can trust all this data that you put, right? How do I verify these claims, right? Like, is there any way that I can see that it's true that there's 0 grams of sugar in Magic Spoon versus 11 in Reese Puffs? Is there any way to figure that out? And then I couldn't really see any cons for my product. Most of this table is built to show off the pros of the product. I think people realize it when you show customers that a product has a flaw, right? There's an instant trust happening in the eye of the customer. Yep. While the opposite, right? When you show that your product doesn't have any flaw, all of the sudden the bullshit meter is going off.
Do you know what
Because
that phenomena is called?
how is it called?
Pratfall effect. So
Interesting.
it's when someone who has got lots of good qualities confesses to a vulnerability, it actually makes them lead as a leader even more likable. So this is and this, we know we've talked about this for customer reviews as well, right? If your reviews are 5 out of 5 stars, then it feels a little suspect. You get one negative review, it actually makes me appreciate the positive reviews even more, because I'm like, I can trust them.
Yeah, and there's this concept that you always talk about, and I never hear any CRO person talking about this, unfortunately. And it's the concept of too good to be true, right? Maybe we should do an episode on that, because
Sure.
you're, again, the only person I've heard talking about the too good to be true problem. The next example actually comes from Bulletproof. And what I really like about this example is that they display this text. I'm gonna zoom in a little bit. So here we are on the product page. They display this text that says, what's the difference? Which is exactly when the user is wondering that question, right? So I thought the execution is okay. I'm not gonna show it, but I thought that call to action, what's the difference, was placed exactly in the moment where that question is going on in the user's mind. So it's
100%.
like a mind reading approach
That's
to
right.
the user. Yeah, the other one that I thought it was very, very interesting comes from this company called Fallen Design. So they have, I'm actually demo to you. So when I go on the PDP, they have this this functionality, compare colors, and when clicking on it, you can actually cherry pick the different colors that you want to compare. Because oftentimes what happens, and I know you know this very well, I oftentimes look at session recordings, and I see people selecting one color and then scrolling up and checking like what the color of the product is, and then, oh, I want to see what the product looks like in black, right? So then what they do, they go down, they select the black color, and then they go up and they have to recheck. So there's this like ping pong game happening where the user has to keep on scrolling, right? While these guys, they make it like super easy. This is mimicking the offline behavior as well,
Absolutely.
right? I go to luggage store, and of course I'm gonna put one next to each other to see how or even when you go buy a piece of clothes, right? Like you go buy a t-shirt, what do? You put one t-shirt next to another one to see how they look like, and so you can make a choice of which one you want to buy.
I totally agree. I remember when you posted this example, I really liked it immediately. And I was like, wow, I had not even ever considered this point of friction, right? And one of the things I want to mention here is that one of the things I love, I wish more interviewers would ask this question when they're interviewing someone, is what have you reversed your opinion about, right? Because that's a sign of growth. To me, I will confess, is that I've always been confused about color options. To me, I've always seen it as a point of friction and always thought to myself, why the hell do you have like 10 options? But I've now come to realize that actually color is a really important signal for the buyer. They really, really care about color for anything. And so when brands have 20 colors, there's a lot of science to how they added those colors or why they have those colors. So I've really changed my view on color now. But yeah, this is a great example.
Did you say that you wanted to make a point?
I do want to make a general point here though.
Yeah.
So we've all seen comparison tables. I will say that while we are talking about improvements on comparison table and we're talking about points of friction with comparison table, it is really important I challenge anyone listening to this video. And if you show me an example that doesn't use a comparison table that solves what I'm talking about, I'll give you $100. And I'm not saying this because I genuinely would think it's worth $100 to see an example. I actually don't think there is a more efficient way to communicate large quantities of information in small real estate. I actually think comparison table is a genius of invention, because it allows you to very easily compare a whole variety of attributes in a very small amount of real estate. Imagine if we didn't have comparison tables and I was trying to write in long form copy explain those attributes, not only would it be 10 pages long, it would be so convoluted and incomprehensible for the buyer, it would actually kill conversion rates. So I actually think comparison tables are a genius invention. I wanted to just give this context because I just want people to know that we love comparison tables. I think it's a genius idea. We're always just looking for small edges that you can apply to your comparison table to make it better. That's all.
Yeah, and again, people have been comparing products and features for years. This is not just online, right?
Right.
Now I want to show an example that I stole from the SaaS industry, right? You'll have a lot of examples from the SaaS industry as well. I'm a big fan of this, Rishi. I'm a big fan of going to a different industry than e-commerce, trying to figure out what type of problems I think SaaS businesses are trying to solve with functionalities, design, copy, and so on, and think, how can I bring that to the e-commerce? And this is exactly what I've done with QuickBooks. Part of Intuit. These guys have a large experimentation and A/B testing team, so they have their shit together big time. Here we are on the pricing page. And what happens is that when you click on one of the drop down here, with all the different features.
Let me stop you here for a second. First, let's do some reverse engineering to understand. Lorenzo, who is clicking on track income and expenses link?
Who wants to understand more about that?
Okay, just want to make that point clear. So, the user is telling us how to convert them. We just have to listen to them.
Yeah, and oftentimes I have to say, I haven't checked this the list of features for this example, but oftentimes I would say the user has no idea about those features. There's a clarity issue. They have no idea, because oftentimes it's the company language, unfortunately, right?
No, that's true. That is true as well.
So the user what the hell does that even mean? What do you mean by that, right? So what I found, these guys, I thought they were genius, because what happens is when you click on one of those features, there's this slider that appears from the bottom. And basically this is sales pitch in two different formats, right? There's a text sales pitch, which is, kind of like a list of benefits about that particular feature. And then, maybe there are some skimmers that, oh, no, I want to know more now. And now they present a video as well of that feature in action, which I thought it was completely genius.
This is a best-in-class example. I've never seen it. It is, without a doubt, they're the first ones I've seen do this. And it's so obvious. And you might listen to this and say, guys, you're showing me a SaaS example. This does not apply to e-commerce. It 1000% applies. Imagine if you are selling running shorts or track pants or any kind of clothing, and you are saying that, or you're selling a winter coat where you're saying, we have a waterproof zipper, for example, and our competitor doesn't have it. What if you added a video, that a little animated GIF that actually showed that's just that feature, right? So you can absolutely learn from this. And I think that I just love this example. It's really the best I've seen ever.
Yeah, it's like demonstrating a claim that they're making, right? Which is from a trust perspective, it's 10x bigger than just listing down a bunch of benefits. Now, let's look at another example. So these guys, they're in the pet industry. They sell pet food. They're called Merrick, and they actually have a very bold thing on the homepage when you visit their site. I'm gonna visit here. But basically what they have is you can compare, because they sell products for both dogs and cats. So you first select what type of animal you have, what type of pet you have, and then you can select the product, the Merrick product that you're interested in. And then what you can do is also compare that against another competitor in the market. And then you click go, and then they show you kind of a comparison table. I thought this comparison table was fine, nothing crazy.
I think the interface, I think the fact that the user is able to control, we always believe that when users can drive the experience, there's a higher probability of them converting.
Exactly. I love that. But there's something very interesting. I'm gonna zoom in here because what caught my attention was actually this little detail that actually two details that they kind of like hid here. So the first one is comparison as of July 2022, which I thought it was interesting because it gives like, okay, this is not like something that they created like 10 years ago. And now this is kind of like up-to-date table, so up-to-date information. And people always want up-to-date information. But the other thing that I thought it was like genius was this one, which is completely hidden, which is like product information was sourced from brand website, instinctpackfood.com. So what that tells me is that this is not something that they came up with themselves, like the company language and the company features to be shown off. This is data coming from a third party website in the pet space, in the pet food space, which almost brings a little bit of additional trust, because this is not our claims. This is claims coming from somebody else. And unfortunately, they hide it down here. But there's an opportunity here to make it more prominent. Now, another one, this is like a small detail, but I thought it was interesting. So these guys, Alpha Paw, they sell dog food for I can't remember the name of the breed. They're like the wiener dogs.
Dachshund?
Yeah, exactly. And because this is like a small size breed, right? Dogs' mouths are obviously very, very small, and they're not compared to like maybe like a pit bull, right? So for that reason, they need to make very small kibbles of dog food. So basically, like the size of the food apparently does matter in the decision-making process, because the pet owner is like, oh my God, if it's too big, I'm afraid that my dog is gonna choke, right?
And also, as a buyer, this signals to me that we have one of the things that I'm looking for is that how many angles have you considered my problem from? And this, even though this is just one example, it's a strong signal that if they've considered this one detail, they maybe have considered many other details, and that makes me more likely to buy from them.
Totally. And I thought it was interesting. Okay, let's compare one thing with a visual. I love the visual here, because they're not saying, oh, our kibble are 0.4 inches, 0.23 inches, and yours are 4. This is like even this thing has a big impact, right? So I thought it was very interesting. I added two more, which I couldn't find, but I thought they would be like, okay, I would love to see some examples of that. Actually, if you're watching and you have seen any example like that, please reach out to me. I keep track of like a lot of these examples. I have my own swipe file, which I've been building for years. So I'll be super curious to see it.
Lorenzo will even trade with you. If you share with him one good example, he'll give you 10 more examples to keep for you.
Good idea. But basically, the first one is, can we use active participation? And if you don't know what active participation is, we actually have an entire episode on the topic. Please go into our channel and go in the search bar and type in active participation. We have 40 minutes all dedicated to this technique that we have never seen anybody pretty much using it. So go look for it. But what active participation basically is you ask people what they care about.
What are you show people?
Yeah. What are the features that they care to compare about? And then you show off those features against, compared against whatever they care to compare them to compare them against. So as Rishi was saying earlier, you put the user in the driver's seat, and he's driving the experience. She's driving the experience, right? So that would be one thing that I would love to see. I couldn't find an example, but I thought it would be super useful. The other thing is you found an example on this, but I thought this execution was okay. I would love to see a comparison table where there's a button that you can click, and that button only highlights the differences between products, right? I've never seen something like that. So If you have an example of these, please reach out. I have two more examples, which are actually bonuses. You can get access to these bonuses by signing up to our newsletters. One is about comparing based on the jobs to be done, which both you and I are a big fan of. And then another one is comparing audio of two products, which I thought it was completely genius. So if you want to get access to the bonus examples, please sign up to our newsletter.
I love it. I love it.
Rishi,
These are really
your
good.
turn.
These are really, I mean, you've really, this has been a big brain dump. And in fact, what I have is I have just a few examples to share. What I've done is, what I did was I kind of thought about, okay, like, just a second. I wanted to think about like, one of the principal issues, I think the biggest lacking of innovation for me with comparison tables is the mobile experience, because it's a real problem. Because
Yeah.
as wonderful comparison tables are, they are really kind of, they really compress information, but they can only take it so much. And on mobile, I've noticed a lot of brands do weird things where they'll kind of take each attribute and they'll kind of like, they'll try to stack it vertically. It becomes too cumbersome. I think it's a problem. So I this one example that I found for the mobile comparison table that I thought was quite good, and I'll share it over here. This is for I guess it's a supplement brand, and what they have. So this is on the desktop. I think it looks like this. On mobile, what they've done is, I think this is very interesting, because what normally happens, and I know this is a little small, so I'll just try to make this a little bigger. So what normally happens is that the attribute that is being compared across brands, or in this case across brands, is kind of on the column one. And because it's just one column, you can't fit a lot of words in it. So typically the marketer will really shorten it. The problem with shortening it is that you sometimes convert it into jargon, which people don't understand, or it's incomplete information. And then you have a tooltip next to it, and you have to click on or mouse over the tooltip to see more context. And I just have never liked those interfaces. So I really like these guys. What they've done is they've taken that attribute and, like, as Lorenzo mentioned to me earlier before our show, they've converted into like a mini sales page. And then below that, they have the tick marks. And so I just felt like they've really been able to figure out, like, how do we repurpose the comparison table in the context of the mobile experience? And I just thought that was a really good, it's the best example that I was able to come across. So I thought I'd share it. So that's one example. What else do I have? Some of these other examples are desktop examples, primarily because the nature of those products are, so when someone is buying a laptop, Dell laptop, people are typically buying it in a work setting. So it makes sense that they'll probably experience this on their mobile phones. The thing about laptops is this is an inherently complicated comparison, because there are so many attributes to talk about, and we don't know what the user really cares about. And I think active participation here would have been very useful as well, because we could have asked them for the attributes they cared about and simplified the crap out of this. But they haven't done it that way. But what is interesting is that this is a super long comparison table. So they recognize that, and I give them props for that. And what they realized was that, okay, let's have a floating menu bar. And so you can click on display, and it actually just shows you that. Now, it would be nicer if when I click on this, it actually highlights this thing for like 2 seconds, just so I visually know that this is the thing. It's still, I mean, how do people know that it's at the top of when you select it? How do they know that it's supposed to come on the top? I feel like there's some UI stuff that can be improved. But what I really like about it, and again, this is not perfect because it says security SOF. What does that mean? It's not clear, but assuming that it is clear, if someone cared about security software, I think to be able to zero in on that section, I think it's quite nice. So it was just I thought it was an interesting, I think it's an interesting idea if you have a very, very complicated comparison table. I don't necessarily think that this is the best example, but it's, it was quite good. I want to give a shout out to, and Trina, I hope you're listening to this, because I suspect that you are somehow involved in this, but it's just a really, really good example. And I want to.
She has Trina's fingers all over the place, right?
Yeah, I think so. I believe so. Yes. Again, I always look at everything UI, UX, copywriting from the perspective of the buyer psychology. And when I think about comparison tables, what screams to me is anxiety, indecision, analysis paralysis, right? The user is stuck. Now, the user is looking at Convert, which, by the way, is an A/B testing software, really good tool. And the user is now saying, okay, I want to do some A/B testing. They come to this Convert page, this comparison page. I really like this comparison table. It has all the best practices that we talk about. But I thought what was very special about it is that they recognize that there is this anxiety element. A lot of people that are doing testing are actually doing testing for the very first time. So a big part of the audience has never done experimentation before formally. And so what they've done, which I thought was very nice, is that, before they kind of really get into like what's the difference between each of these attributes for all of these plans, they actually visually make one attribute really stand out because it's a common feature for all of them. They place it right on the top of the table. They're adding space above and below. And what it's saying is that guided 10-step onboarding, because they recognize that onboarding is a really important point of friction. And so how does a retailer use this? What I would say is that give more real estate and give more visual prominence to attributes in your comparison table that really, really matter. Don't treat every attribute as being equally important, because then you are kind of, so I just thought this is really good. And you can even use this to maybe highlight chat, right? You know that the person has anxiety. So maybe one of the fields in your comparison table should be like, don't struggle with this table. We're here to talk to you right now, or something, because clearly the person who's on the comparison table is experiencing anxiety.
One thing, I'm gonna add one more thing, Rishi. What I really like about this example is also that each feature is underlined with dots, which what happens is like it shows that those are clickable.
That's right.
Because I guarantee you, in every single pricing page of any SaaS business, people are clicking on product features that are being mentioned there because they want to learn more. Obviously, not all of them, but this is a clear signal that people want to learn more about that. Maybe because they don't truly understand it, or maybe they want to understand how it works.
I totally agree with you. I think that dashed underline is actually a really clever UI
design
trick to. I agree with you there. Another thing that this is a kind of like a poor man's version of the QuickBooks example that Lorenzo shared, but I think for people that don't want to invest in video content, this is a pretty good solution. So what they've done is the attributes. So for example, over here, AI powered bots, when you click on it, there's actually a screenshot that actually shows that interface. So I don't have to like imagine like how this would look. It doesn't give me all the context, but it gives me enough context to go to the next step. Similarly, if I select light agents, I don't know what that is, but it kind of shows the interface. And I'm like, okay, well, this makes sense. And so I thought this was quite useful. Again, giving visual context, I think is quite important.
One thing that could be cool here, if you go back.
Yep.
If you go back, click on one of those features.
Let's go to this one.
I think it would be interesting to ask for feedback about this
oh, sure. Yeah, did this help? Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I totally agree. And the screenshot I've saved is one they're kind of showing some live analytics. So it helps me visualize it. Okay. Now, another thing, and VWO here does, I think, a good job with this, is that the challenge with comparison tables is that I kind of look at it as being like a drilling function. The user might be at a higher level, and so then you don't want to give too much information. Once they drill in, you can give more information. So normally comparison tables are pretty complicated, but for VWO, what they've done is, and again, I'm not commenting on what information they should have and they shouldn't have, but the table doesn't feel intimidating based on this first view. And so it says growth, pro, and enterprise. And I might say, you know what, this pro sounds kind of promising. They haven't talked about any pricing or anything at this point. And once you're ready to dig in more, it's almost like giving the user breathing room, because they're landing on this page. If you show them something very complicated, already the anxiety level is high and they now don't know what to do. Here, what they've done is they've smartly kept the first version of it to be simplistic. And then when the user is ready for it, then they're surfacing a more complicated, a very, very complicated version of that.
Yeah,
But
this is very complicated.
yeah, it's very complicated. But if this was on the default page, I think that would have been way worse. So I like the fact that by default they're at least making it seem simplistic, and then you can drill
I
in.
wonder how many people are clicking on that link, see our complete feature comparison. I think it would be interesting to track.
Absolutely, absolutely, absolutely. I actually accidentally clicked on the get pricing information, and I was like, no, I don't want that. So there could just be also a conversion problem as well.
Yeah.
So I think this is my favorite feature. So this one actually does use some version of active participation. It does, so what I think is very interesting is that what this is doing is it's basically recontextualizing the comparison table based on attributes that I care about. So it's saying, what's your credit level? I have excellent credit. Okay, are you looking for a business or a personal card? I'm looking for a personal card. What do you want to spend it on? Oh, I think dining is what I'm looking for. And it's now surfacing two products that I can compare side by side based on those attributes. So similarly, if you're selling something for pet products or any kind of product, it could be workout clothes. You can ask a few questions, and then you can kind of surface products that actually match. It's a useful. I think it's a useful filtering mechanism. So, like going back to Convert's example, instead of like showing the comparison table, what they could have done is they could have said, how much testing have you done before, or things like that, and then kind of said, based on those selections, make some recommendations. You're essentially, like Lorenzo mentioned, the idea is to try and mimic what already exists. E-commerce is a new phenomena, but we've been selling for hundreds and hundreds of years. What does a salesperson do? The first thing a salesperson does is he understands what your context is, and based on that context, then he gives you comparison. So anyway, I think that kind of covers everything on my end. But we don't. I don't look at this episode as being like the definitive answer on comparison tables. That wasn't our goal. We wanted to kind of pull a few examples. Hopefully you've seen a few things where you're like, oh, this thing I can implement on my comparison table. I think the biggest thing for us is that just drawing more attention to the importance and the conversion importance of comparison table, so you can kind of keep it as a line item in your marketing budgets for this year, because I think it's something that will have a big impact on your revenue goals.
Yeah, and in general, if you're not able to compare it, they won't convert. So we thought it would be interesting to talk about a common conversion blocker and friction, like comparison, not being able to compare products on a site.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys for sticking with us today. Please leave us a comment and let us know what you thought about the content or what ideas you like the best. We listen and read all comments.
Yeah.
One request I have is that please think of like I cannot imagine that there isn't one person in your network who is doing marketing, who is dealing with a situation where, or a product where comparison is something that's really important for their business and they haven't figured out the right solution. If you can forward this video to them, I think they'll get tons of value from it. We appreciate your support, and we will see you with yet another DTC episode very soon. Take care.
Thank you, guys. Thank you.